Thank you, dear Executive Director Hamish McDougall, dear Ambassador Meredith, Kia ora, ohoama. Is it good? Okay, dear friends. First of all, let me thank the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs and the Centre for Strategic Studies and Victoria University for the invitation and for organizing this meeting with you. It's the first time I'm in this part of the world, and this is my first time in your beautiful country. I guess I just fell in love with with your country at first glance. You know, New Zealand is for us a model how to build a prosperous, sovereign and democratic country while preserving national identity and culture. I believe that Belarusians can learn a lot from New Zealanders. Many Belarusians actually have already discovered New Zealand because hundreds of Belarusians now live in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. Some arrived recently after our peaceful uprising in 2020, fleeing persecutions and terror. And this country actually has long offered a safe haven to many people from Eastern Europe. Many Belarusians actually have discovered their Belarusian identity here, also in New Zealand. Some of them believe that we have to learn from Maori when it comes to national identity. I just met members of the Belarusian diaspora in Auckland and Wellington. And living 16,000 kilometers from home, they have learned to love both Belarus and New Zealand. Our people mostly work in business, in academia, and some of them in literature. And I know at least 2 young Belarusian female writers who live here and publish amazing books. You know, definitely that Belarus and New Zealand may not have many things in common, but one thing unites us for sure. It's Anzac. Many Belarusian immigrants served within the Anzac, like Norman Meyer, for example, from Tatarsk near Orsha, this is Belarusian city, or William de Wong, who was awarded by military medal for fighting at Gallipoli. And I hope that my visit will help to build new connections and raise awareness about Belarus, about Ukraine and our region among New Zealanders. Dear friends, yesterday just after arrival as an average tourist, I visited Rotorua and stopped by Hobbiton. You know, these films about hobbits are very popular in Belarus too. People of Belarus really love it because in these movies, truth, friendship and courage win at the end. You know, one Belarusian writer called Belarusians hobbits of European woods. Not because we are small or arrogant, but because we love to live quietly in the comfort of our homes and communities. And you may say that we prefer not to step out of our comfort zone. But in 2020, Belarusian people stepped into the limelight of history. And I'm going to tell about this event later a little bit. Just a couple of more words. You know, I admit that Belarus might be not very popular country, not the most popular country in the world. And before 2020, when our uprising started, it was very little known. It was like a gray zone. And usually when you ask about Belarus, people could name 3 stereotypes: Chernobyl, tractors, and Lukashenko. I will start with Chernobyl. Chernobyl really affected Belarus a lot. This nuclear catastrophe left a huge wound on the body of Belarus. 70% of radioactive waste fell on Belarus. I myself was one of the so-called Chernobyl children. In my teens, I visited Ireland every summer in order to improve my health, and it really meant a lot to me because I learned how the life could be different and actually more fun. Maybe some of you also know Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, Nobel Literature Prize winner. She wrote brilliant non-fiction books about the impact of Chernobyl and about the disintegration of the Soviet Empire. Sometimes the post-Soviet dictatorship in Belarus is called political Chernobyl, which is probably worse even than the nuclear one. I will miss tractors. I will talk about Lukashenko and dictatorship. So, do you know what life in dictatorship is like? I just want you to imagine. It is when you wake up, go to the internet, you turn on the VPN to learn what is really going on in your country and in your town, and how many people were arrested yesterday. It is when you check out the extremist list every day just to find there another website or Telegram channel that you are subscribed to, so you have to delete the subscription right away. It is when you walk down the streets and see your favorite cafe closed because the owner, your longtime friend, was arrested. She made a donation to political prisoners 5 years ago, and now the police came for her. She might get several years of imprisonment in politically biased trial. You might go to visit her at the detention center, and they say that you cannot see her because she was declared a terrorist. So she cannot receive letters, money, or food from outside. And you cannot do anything about it. And when you come home, you probably start packing your stuff to leave the country because you're afraid that you're going to be the next on this list. Overall, living in Belarus is very much like living in a former Soviet Union, but with high-tech surveillance. An Italian journalist called our country communism with a taste of cappuccino. But there is not only dictatorship in Belarus, there are also Belarusians. Courageous people who 5 years ago said enough to the regime. They stepped out of the shadow of dictatorship and of the shadow of stereotypes. My husband Sergei was one of those who prepared that. He traveled the country with his camera, asking ordinary people about their lives. And his blog was called A Country to Live In. And people told him the truth, and the truth that authorities didn't like to hear. When Sergei announced his plan to run for president against Lukashenko, the dictator began to worry. He wanted to play it safe, and that's why he arrested Sergei, not to let him run. When my husband was in prison, I decided to step in for him and run in his place. I did that out of love to my husband, first of all, because he invested so much efforts in this campaign. And of course, out of love to the people who sincerely believed in change. They stood in long lines to put their signatures in my support. And how could I fail them? My duty was to give the people hope. You know, before 2020, I was never interested in politics. I was a mother busy with raising up 2 children. But my husband's arrest and people's enthusiasm changed everything for me as well. You know, under people's pressure, the dictator registered me as a candidate, but I think that he didn't believe for a second that I could defeat him. Our constitution is not for a woman president, he told. He was just sure that Belarusians would never vote for a woman. And diving into into politics was for me a sort of a bungee jump, a leap of faith without other support than that of Belarusian people and my team of volunteers behind me. And honestly speaking, first I didn't believe in success. But with every meeting with the voters, I felt more and more certain that we would win. I think that Belarusians overgrew the dictator, people changed, and they wanted change, and they turned more and more towards Europe. The elections in Belarus took place in August 9, 2020. This time, we had an alternative count of the ballots, and I received more than 50% of the voters in the first round. I was supposed to be declared as the winner of the presidential election in Belarus. But obviously, dictators have a hard time saying goodbye to their beloved toy, to power, and Lukashenko refused to step down. He declared himself a winner, as he did for last 30 previous years. Of course, people were outraged. They took to the streets to defend our victory, just to be met with brutal force. Several people were killed by police bullets. Thousands were arrested around the country. And there was no internet those days in Belarus. The KGB, we still have KGB in Belarus, so these special military forces forced me to leave. They told me, if you stay in Belarus, you will never see your children again. The regime hoped if they push me out of the country, the protest will stop. But people in Belarus kept fighting and kept believing. Women in white dresses, they were protesting against violence. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered all over the country. People faced the brutal force with their bare hands and flowers. Belarusians kept on protesting for a year, but the Russia-backed terror prevailed. By violence, the dictator Lukashenko took Belarus back, but he lost the Belarusian people forever. After 2020, after that, he began a hybrid war against Europe, using illegal migration. He hijacked a Ryanair plane to arrest journalists. And finally, he dragged our country into the war against Ukraine. If it wasn't for Russia, Lukashenko wouldn't have remained in power. But Putin had his own plans with him. They were planning the invasion on Ukraine already. They needed Belarus to be a launching pad for the attack against Ukraine and against the Western democracy. With the war, repression in Belarus became even more fierce. But Belarusians didn't remain silent after the beginning of the war, because our railway partisans helped Ukrainians to slow down Russian attacks on Kiev by sabotaging Russian military convoys. There were about 100 such attacks, and for that, more than 20 people were brutally detained, tortured, and sentenced to 10, 15, and 20 and more years in prison. Many Belarusians protested in open. They sent money to support Ukraine. They leaked information to Ukrainian forces. An underground group destroyed a Russian intelligence plane. Hundreds of Belarusians went to fight in Ukraine. They formed a Kalinovsky regiment, one of the best in the Ukrainian army. 8 of them have already gave their lives for the freedom. And one of them, I want to tell you one story. One of them was Maria Zaitseva. In 2020, during our revolution, she became a symbol of it. She was stunned by a police grenade and went to Europe to undergo a complicated ear surgery. After that, she could stay in Czech Republic to study, but she went to Ukraine. In her very first battle, she was killed. It happened in January this year. The day before, she just celebrated her 24th birthday. As a queer person, Maria knew what it is like to live in unfree society. She wanted to change her life and that of all Belarusians, and she sacrificed her life for this dream. Today, Belarus is under hybrid occupation. Russian troops are stationed there, including nuclear weapons. Putin and Lukashenko use Belarus territory to terrorize neighboring nations, primarily Ukraine. War propaganda is everywhere. Political parties, independent media, trade unions, NGOs, including ecological, feminist or cultural, all are banned in Belarus. About 500,000 Belarusians were forced to leave Belarus, fearing persecution. More than 1,100 remain in jail, including our Nobel Peace Prize winner Ales Bialiatski, our Polish-Belarusian journalist Andrzej Poczobut, and many, many others. A dozen people have died behind bars since 2020. Repression continues in Belarus and people are detained every day. In June, after 5 years in jail, my husband Sergei was released. It was due to the President Trump's personal involvement, and I'm very grateful to him for that. After the release, Sergei was unlawfully deported from Belarus, and for 2 years he was kept incommunicado, and I had no news from him whatsoever. When we met again, I at first could barely recognize him because he was so thin and so exhausted. Our little daughter couldn't recognize him at all. He told us that he managed to survive the hell. For the most time, he was kept in total isolation. No talks, no letters, no phone calls. He was buried alive in the cell. I think that Sergei's release was a booster for our democratic movement. Today he is in much better physical shape. He continues his fight for a free, independent Belarus and for the release of all political prisoners. We really have done a lot for the last 5 years, many of us even being in exile. I can say that we are building a parallel Belarus, sowing seeds of democracy for the future. Our civil society is very active in Europe and all over the world. But our needs are multiple: to support the prisoners, their families, the released, to teach children Belarusian history and language, and provide help to immigrants in need. For example, together with Norway and other European countries, we created an international humanitarian fund for political prisoners. We even began to issue our own passports to replace expired national passports, which Lukashenko's authorities don't want to renew. Because of their decision, many Belarusians abroad became de facto stateless. Our people are tough, very hardworking and creative. Before 2020, Belarus was known as Europe's IT lab. In the last years, almost all the creative, educated class was forced to emigrate to keep their jobs and businesses. They continue working with us using high-tech innovations to fight for democracy. We have our own voting application, our cyber partisans who hack the regime servers, our online education projects, psychological consultations, and lawyers' offices, and so on and so forth. We built resilient, legitimate political structures in exile. The office of the president-elect, the United Transitional Cabinet as proto-government, and the Coordination Council as proto-parliament. We are all functioning. We conducted the first elections online, and the next ones are in next spring. And together we advocate for more economic sanctions against the regime, but not against Belarusian people. We must preserve people's mobility. Let them travel, study, and see what life in democracy looks like. We also call our partners to open cases against Lukashenko and his cronies to ensure their accountability. We already have collected more than 6,700 cases of crimes against humanity. Thank God we are not alone in this fight. We have powerful allies such as European Union, US, Canada, UK, and European Union are called. And I hope that New Zealand will join this exclusive club too. Our long-term goal is to join the European Union. Only within the European Union can the survival of our nation be guaranteed, as our Nobel Peace Prize winner Alice Bialyatsky wrote. Otherwise, we are going to remain in Russia's colony and to dissolve into the so-called Russian world. Dear friends, Belarusians who live in exile around the world are united by one dream: to come back home, to live normal life at peace with neighbors, in harmony with our environment. And I want New Zealanders to discover our beautiful Belarus one day, to come to see the land of the European hobbits. And I'm sure that you love it. Unfortunately, traveling there is not safe today. Not only because of the war in Ukraine, sometimes foreign citizens are arrested and accused of espionage by Lukashenko to serve as hostages in his political games with the West. But you can help Belarusians in their fight wherever you are. Spreading information in your local media, telling the stories of Belarusian political prisoners, donating to humanitarian organizations such as International Humanitarian Fund, or cooperation with Belarusian diaspora here. And of course, supporting Ukraine, because Ukraine's victory will be our victory too. To support the Belarusian democratic movement is also to support Ukraine and vice versa, because destinies of both our countries are intertwined. We have a common enemy, Russian colonialism. Ukraine's victory will open a new window of opportunity for us Belarusians, because if Lukashenko loses Putin's support, he wouldn't hold for 3 months. To weaken Russia is a key to both Ukraine's victory and Belarus' freedom. And I'm so grateful to New Zealand's government for introducing recent sanctions against Russia's shadow oil fleet and against Lukashenko's company Belnaftahim. And I will ask also your politicians to consider further sanctions against Lukashenko for crimes against humanity and war crimes as well, because even symbolic support matters to us. Dear friends, I just want to finish with such a thought that our fight in Belarus is a global fight actually, because democracy is under attack everywhere all over the world. Dictators believe that might is right. They don't need to listen to people's opinions. They just need obedient servants. They say that people can be happy without personal freedom. So let's prove them wrong. What I ask you to do is don't give up on your democracy. It's like air. You don't notice it until you are suffocating. Please cherish your freedom and your way of life, because it's so easy to lose what you have, but so difficult to get it back. You know, Churchill once said that democracy is not perfect, but at least it can be improved. Dictatorship cannot. So don't think that what's going on in Belarus doesn't concern you. If democracy loses there will be less freedom everywhere. So solidarity with freedom fighters all around the world is what will bring us victory. So I am grateful for you to be here today. It means that you are standing together with Belarusian people for peace, for democracy, and for human rights. Thank you.